Ballpark Nation presents
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here come the Astros burning.
First pitch. And Alex lines it to the left center field at the base hit. Pitcher around third and coming home. Easier up with the baseball. The throw to the plate. Not inside. Astros win. Astros win.
One every time.
Alvarez hits a high drive center field. Beerling's back. This game is turned upside down.
And the pitch is lifted to right by Castellanos. Long run for Tucker over toward the line and foul territory. Makes the catch, and the Houston Astros do it again. 2022 World Series champions.
Welcome to Go Astros, your look at the two-time World Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
Here come the Astros breathing orange fire. Here come the Astros.
I just saw that we have to have that X Prime to start being carried live on Twitter.
So what are we going to ask for donations for the $7 a month or $8 a month?
No, I'm not paying that fucker any more money than he has already. And welcome to Go Astros. We really are actually in a pretty good mood today, having a good show. I am with you as always is Andy outside of Houston in close proximity to Minute Park. And Brian's upstate New York. Brian, how's it going?
I'm doing quite well.
All right, so I think very good series result, both in the obviously the win-loss column, taking 2 of 3 from the Dodgers in Minute Maid Park is a great thing. I think we would all have taken that walking in. And also, even though the Mariners got the White Sox for 3, who have really done a good job of laying down for now 13 straight games, 7 of which against teams that are in contention with us for the division.
I'm sorry. It's 14 straight.
14 straight. Oh, my bad. Sorry,
Good.
White Sox fan.
By the way, if you're on Go White Sox, it's a big day today because if they lose their next game, they'll get to send the text that losing record this year.
Well,
I've
I'm
lost
just
81 games.
I'm excited. This is a good time to point out that our current episode of Ballpark Nation is the White Sox episode. You might want to tune in and talk about better times. But no, guys, seriously, came out of the weekend. You're basically still statistically in first place. Andy, overall, how did it go for you?
I'm going to be the wet blanket because the excitement of taking 2 of 3 from the Dodgers and playing well in that series is very much tempered by losing 2 of 3 to the A's 4 days prior. So it's a 500 week. And I know, looking at the schedule, you probably would have hoped that you would take 2 at least from Oakland. 4 and 2 would feel a lot better to me than 3 and 3. But they played well. They've played well for pretty much since coming out of the All-Star break. So I'm just I'm waiting like everybody else to see what the move is going to make, because the primary reason for that Oakland series was lack of starting pitching. And that's not being fixed tonight.
It feels like, Andy, the duct tape and the twine that's held this thing together might be starting to come loose a little bit. I mean, Arrighetti, again, pitched well yesterday until he didn't. I wish that this spot had listened to Brian's third time through the order theory, but also there was no bullpen left anyway. But it really feels like you're exactly right. You could see those losses coming because of who is pitching.
And it doesn't help that the offense decided not to show up for 2 of those games in Oakland, kind of like they didn't show up yesterday against the Dodgers. But it is what it is. 500 weeks better than a less than 500 week.
And
I'll give the offense didn't show up, Brian. But to be fair, it's especially during a lot of this post All-Star break run, it's been a late arriving offense anyway, which puts even more pressure. The starting pitching's got to be good, so that way the Astros can work their magic. If they're trying to come back from, outside of Saturday, 6 runs down, it's not going to be your odds of success go down.
Yeah, the optimistic take on the week is they absolutely totally stole that game on Saturday. They went, 6 of 9 with runners in scoring position with lots of soft contact singles. And I think they went like 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position yesterday. So had that evened out, you'd have lost 2 games. You know, they've had 3 hits with runners in scoring position both games and just spread them out. It wouldn't have worked out so well. So the baseball gods were in our favor on Saturday. You know, get one back for the many, many, many times when they have not been.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think if you take all the times in April that we did not hit a seeing eye single with runners in scoring position, we should have a game where we just have about 62 of them in a row.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do still contend. I mean, yeah, obviously a lot of that is luck, but I also think you got to think Alex Bregman had probably his best AB of the season by getting exactly what he wanted and not missing it, which is not something we've seen a lot out of him as a season wide. It's been better as of late. Trade deadline is tomorrow at 5:00, which puts us, somewhere around 9 hours away, 30 hours away, something like that. A lot of Astros Twitter is panicking, as they are wont to do. They are just assuming that no deals will be made.
I'm sorry, James. You said that as though that was a new or different phenomenon. They just
I did follow.
Period. Yeah,
I did follow it up with as they are wont to do.
Mm-hmm.
But Andy, there's zero chance that Dana Brown is going to intentionally take a knee on this trade deadline. And I say intentionally because people got to remember that I think a lot of these deals do come down to the last minute because it's a seller's market. So you're going to have to basically get a team willing to take what you're offering because they're afraid they're not going to get another offer. And that's why these things are going to go down to the last day. Talk to me a little bit about your overall feelings of the trade deadline.
Something will happen. I mean, I'm going to use your exact words for you. Dana Brown is not intentionally taking a knee. Is there a world where no deal gets done? 100%. That is a thing that could happen. But I don't anticipate that that's a thing that's going to happen because Jim Crane likes winning, and Jim Crane at the very least, if Dana Brown can't pull something off, Jim Crane will decide that he wants to spend more money because he likes to win. Regardless of what we think about being cheap and all those other things. And if you could, package a Montero and send some garbage for a great player, we would 100% do that. It will be interesting. And I looked back at Twitter about a year ago, and it's the same people on Twitter that are panicking today that were panicking a year ago, that were panicking 2 years ago, that were panicking before Zach Greinke got traded, that were panicking before we acquired Justin Verlander. Because another team did something, that means we're not doing something, and it's not a zero-sum game. So hold your bullets, I guess, until 5:00 tomorrow, and then you can have something to really bitch about. I still anticipate the Astros picking up at least one starter. So far, only one starter has moved, which means there's a lot of teams bidding. I still think they're going to pick up probably 2 arms. What combination that looks like, and then you hope that Verlander and Garcia come back and your pitching looks a lot different next week than it does this week. I also still hope they're looking at a bat somewhere because I don't think that playing Chas McCormick and Joey Loperfido every day, and I know people love Joey Loperfido, but he's prone to going 0 for 15 and 0 for 12 a lot, as rookies do. He's going to be an exciting player maybe next year, but this year he's going to go through those struggles as all young players do. I'd like to have an established corner outfielder picked up too. So we'll see what happens in the next 29 hours.
Yeah, Brian, to his point, and I want your take on this, obviously, but yeah, there's been a lot of little moves, but to me, those moves feel like on the margins. There's usually a lot of initial excitement on the moves, and then people dive into the numbers and they realize they really haven't been that significant. This is always it's always going to be a last minute bidding war.
Yeah. In fact, the Zach Greinke trade was announced online after the deadline.
Right.
And so I still have some receipts on people who declared the Astros had blown the deadline and then I guess we're pleasantly surprised when they learned out they didn't know what they were talking about. Or not, because, well, it's Twitter. So, yeah, Andy makes a really good point here. The only starting pitcher who's moved so far is Zach Eflin. But the Zach Eflin trade shows you the difficulty for the Astros, which is the Orioles traded a bunch of people in this kind of the middle of their system who are not their top people. They can do that quite comfortably. The Astros, it is much harder to do that because they don't have the depth that a lot of teams do. Obviously, the Orioles have maybe regard the best farm system in the majors, and maybe looking to make another sort of deal. And so that will limit the options and the ability of Dana Brown. And again, the hope is that the farm system rises up over the next couple of years so that they're not quite in this position, but they have a clear need starting position. But also, it address other positions without really decimating the top of their farm system. And frankly, they did that last year. They went all in last year. But that's part of the thing about this year is, get back to your original question, are they going to make a trade? Well, between the Verlander trade last year and giving up a draft pick and going into the luxury tax to sign Josh Hader, the best relief arm, the Astros have shown they're very much all in. The Astros front office, primarily Jim Crane, I believe, has shown he's all in on winning in 2024. And so acquiring any new players would require to pay more luxury tax. They may go up to an extra threshold on that. But I would anticipate they're willing to do that because essentially they're pot committed to this season. And again, that will, I think, determine what they do over the next 29 hours.
Andy, I look, and I know it's short-sighted, but we all knew that the Astros would get to this stage of the window or the run where the farm system would be depleted, like Brian says, and that it would be a lot of missing and matching and doing your best to keep things together. I do not give one iota about the future of Pedro Leon or Melton or any of these guys. Because even if they make it to the show, we don't know what kind of big leaguer they're going to be. Versus, I mean, parade's not prospects, right? Like, I would rather see those guys get packaged and get a decent starting pitcher in here and give it a real honest run at winning the World Series both this year and last year. Because, I mean, next year, because after 2025, that's when real questions pop up. Hey, Craig, I know how old Pedro Leon is. Does it change the fact that he's going to be a trade bait? So, yay.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot over the last 5 days of people who are absolutely in love with Pedro Leon, who is 26 years old, as Craig mentions in the chat, and this is his third year in AAA. If he wasn't hitting as well as he is, I would be amazed, because anybody in AAA 3 years in a row should be doing what he's doing. Yeah, he's got power. Yes, they finally settled on a defensive position. Yes, the Astros could trade him and absolutely miss out on 5 years of a great player. That is a thing that could happen, but the likelihood of that happening is low because his prospect profile is not great. The only reason, I don't even know if Leon is in the top 10.
Yeah, but I don't want to get into this whole thing about arguing with Craig in the comments because we're having a show going. But whether you want to call him a prospect or not, he is technically still a prospect of the Houston Astros. Let's get out of the weeds here and keep having a conversation because people are discussing trading for Pedro Leon. Andy, continue.
Right, but it's you could call it Shea Whitcomb too if we're too emotionally involved. There are people who are cherry picking AAA players who are not profiled to be contributing major leaguers, falling in love with them, and then getting mad that they're not getting traded while simultaneously getting mad that the Astros aren't making deals. And one of the things has to happen. You have to give up players who have any value. And if you believe that Pedro Leon has value, or Shea Whitcomb, or whoever it is, and there's some GM out there that believes these guys have value, trade them. Because if you can get an established major leaguer at a place of need, like starting pitching, like an established bat who can play a corner position, you do that for this year because the Astros are geared to win this year. The only thing that I have seen fall off the board that was disappointing for me as an Astros fan was Isaac Paredes being traded from the Rays. That was disappointing to me. I don't care that Arozarena is in Seattle. He's not hitting this year. He's not a great player. And yes, we all remember the 2020 playoffs. That was 5 years ago. It is what it is. We're going to get somebody. And if we don't, it's not going to be for lack of trying. But the Astros have holes, and you need to use whatever collateral you have right now to plug those holes to try to win this year.
I do not believe that there is any untouchable prospect. And I understand that Luna was able to do things like declare Whitley and Tucker untouchable because, as before mentioned, the depth of the farm system. Brian, do you feel like any of these guys are untouchable?
I mean, at some level, none of them are untouchable because if the Orioles offered you Gunnar Henderson or the Royals offered you, Bobby Witt Jr. for Jacob Melton, we'd all make that trade in an instant. I mean, right? So it's what it is. I mean, the question is,
I would give up Jacob Melton for a decent number 3 that could eat innings because it's about this year and next year.
Okay. So part of what, the other point to make about sort of previous trades is, right, they traded for Justin Verlander and Garrett Cole. And not only did they not trade the guys who were kept off the board, Jordan and Kyle, most specific, Jordan and Tucker, most specifically, had in 2019, the Diamondbacks said, I know Corbin Martin was a high draft pick, but this 5th starter you got who just came up, Framber, whatever he is, we like him better. Would you throw him in? None of us would have been sitting here, right? I mean, so part of it is you need to make the right judgment on your own players and not, hey, they traded for Cole and Greinke and didn't trade, Javier and Valdez, and that was absolutely key to them winning in 2022. So parades over prospects is, first of all, you're not guaranteed a parade. And they're probably trading for a 3rd or 4th starter, someone who's going to pitch. If he pitches, whoever they get, they get, let's say, Yusei Kikuchi would be, I think, a potential. Do we want to see Yusei Kikuchi pitch the 3rd time through the order in a playoff game? No. Do we want to see him pitch a lot between now and the end of the season and help us to an AL West title? Absolutely. We absolutely need that. So a part of the GM job is to get a balance and to trade the right guys. And don't hold on to the wrong guys. It's worth noting that
I do think I saw your comparison to Cole on Twitter. I do think that's a bit of a false equivalency because that was a not deadline deal where you had more time to work that out. It was made in the offseason. I don't know that those are same. You often see people getting less at the winter meetings versus at a trade deadline. People get panicky, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I just don't feel like even though Jacob Melton is our number 1 prospect, he's something like 80 in the top 100. I don't think that he is. Yeah. I would give him up tomorrow for Kikuchi to give us to even have a 6-man rotation. Andy,
I've given up a lot less than Jacob Melton for Kikuchi at times in my life. So, I think it's germane to understand.
This was the family show.
I think it's germane to understand too, just the likelihood of minor leaguers ever becoming anything. I mean, they're cards in a deck. Only about 10%. There's 7,000 minor leaguers in an average season, more than. Only about 10% of them ever make the majors. Less than 5% of that group make it to free agency. And that's what I would consider a successful player, a player who plays 6 years.
Sure.
It's a pick and a poke. It's the ultimate pick and a poke. You may have an idea that there's great odds on this guy being great, and it's certainly easy to ID Ken Griffey Jr. in the minor leagues and go, that's going to be a Hall of Famer. Yeah. It's a whole lot less likely to pick Jacob Melton and go, that's a guy that we absolutely 100% have to hold on to or we're going to die as a franchise. There is no player in the Astros organization that has that kind of profile right now that's not named Yordan Alvarez.
No, I mean, I agree. And I think part of it too, Andy, because you and I also do a lot of minor league baseball stuff with Ballpark Nation. So we know that numbers in the Pacific Coast League are not real numbers. And I know that some of our fan base, they don't follow the minors that much. They just see Joey Loperfido leading all of baseball in home runs and think it's going to translate to the major league level. And it hasn't. I mean, even when he was hitting when he came up, he was just hitting singles. Like, he really hasn't hit for power since he's been up.
And he might. I mean, he could still.
Sure.
He's very young in his career. He's a guy I think the Astros are very high on. He's also a guy that I think Dana Brown would probably listen to if the right deal was offered. And the fan base would go nuts because, we love Joey Loperfido now. Most of them couldn't tell you who Joey Loperfido was 18 months ago.
Right. Also, too, Brian, we know that Loperfido is up. Chas McCormick not hitting as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Kyle Tucker will be back. Hopefully. Who do you think is the odd man out when that does happen out of McCormick and Loperfido? Because it seems like it's going to be one of those two.
It doesn't seem like that's happening anytime soon. So
I said
what their stats are
Brian,
today may not be what their what their stats are today may not what their stats are.
Okay, see the way these work is often we ask hypothetical.
Also could be September 1st when the rosters expand and they don't have to send anyone down. I mean, this is
Okay, so hey Brian, let me explain how these shows work. We often ask hypothetical questions for you to answer with information you have now. So I said, who do you think would be the odd man out?
I mean, I think it would be Loperfido. But they did kind of make that decision for a bit. Sorry.
And I don't see how
they're in first place in the West and have the best record in the American League since they went 7-19 at the beginning of the season. So
I don't
optimistic too here.
But the Astros have given Chas McCormick all the rope that he can possibly handle, and he's had the best 7 days he's had in probably the last couple of months. This last week, and he's batting .231, and a lot of his OPS is driven by the fact that he finally hit another home run. That gives him 4 for the season, I think. It's our outfield is problematic because I think the organization does hold on to players and give them benefit of the doubt a little bit too long when performance just isn't happening. Jake Myers is having a very good season, and a lot of us would have sold on Jake Myers last year and probably wouldn't have been wrong for doing so. So there is examples where that patience pays off, but in the middle of a pennant race, in the middle of a down season, I think other organizations would have already sent down Chas McCormick because he has options, and let him figure things out in the minor leagues for a month or two while you get somebody else in that lineup. Chas McCormick has hurt this team this year. Regardless of what he did in 2022, regardless of how well he played last year, it's just not happening so far this year. And we have a pretty big sample size to judge on so far this year.
Yeah, I would rather chalk up Loperfido's struggles to similar to Kyle Tucker's struggles, where he still has to have time to figure it out, whereas Chas McCormick is supposed to be an established major leaguer and is not playing like one. I did not bring up Trey Cabbage because he can play more than just the outfield. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, your options, though, right, outside of these guys are, with Tucker injured, it's not clear what they are.
Well, I mean, you have Dubon still, right?
It's Mauricio Dubon and Trey Cabbage and a host of other guys. It probably is Aledmys Diaz somehow, who is on our roster again somehow.
Yeah.
That's another thing I don't understand about the Astros, because he doesn't provide exceptional anything exceptional that Greg Kessinger wasn't providing for cheaper. But guy smells like a veteran, so I guess we're going to sign him.
Yeah, that's perplexing to me too, Brian. And I will say that a lot of Astros Twitter's panic would proved unwarranted because he played the first 2 games that he was here and he hasn't touched the field since.
Yeah.
But it does seem perplexing to make that move when you do have Greg Kessinger sitting there. Or also you could have used that 26-man shot to get a look at somebody like Will Wagner or somebody like that.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, right, and this is part of why Kessinger had the roster spot, it doesn't make much sense to bring Will Wagner up here and bat him, 2 games in a week and give him 5 at-bats a week. That's not good for Will Wagner. That's not good for whatever sort of person comes up. So part of why I think Greg Kessinger had that roster spot for so long is they actually didn't have to play him. And no, I'm serious. Like they
I think you're right. I just think I think you're exactly right. That's why he had that roster spot.
Yeah, I mean, you're reducing the number.
You need somebody to catch the ceremonial first pitch, and that's your job, buddy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there, and there's a great series. Grandfather played there. He's from the Manning family of Ole Miss baseball. So it's a lovely story. Guess he's the arch. But. Yeah, I mean, right.
You mean Archie?
Sure, why not?
Arch is the kid who hasn't played yet.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, He's so
He's a great
Don't put that
character.
evil on me.
People think,
Yeah,
hey, this guy could
Dale.
be great because of his last name. So parallel works pretty strong. People in New Orleans talk about it more than they should. Trey Cabbage isn't hitting better than Joey Loperfido. You have a lot of, not great options. Mauricio Dubon, his playing time's gone down, but he essentially played as a regular for, 2 to 3 months this season. So, and I suspect he'll get, he gets a lot of playing time, but still they think he doesn't work against, a pinch hitting for him in the 6 on Saturday turned out to be, that's a move that worked. They're trying to mix and match with what they have. And really the solution to the outfield is for Kyle Tucker's bone to act like, leg bone to act like every other leg bone in the world, and apparently not Kyle Tucker's.
Okay, yeah. So I guess let's jump into that as the last big topic I wanted to discuss. Okay, Andy, do you think we're going to see Kyle Tucker this season again?
I mean, yeah, they're doing a jersey giveaway for him this week, so I think that's a thing. He'll show up and wave his hand. I fully expect him to come back with one of those Oscar Pistorius blades on his shin instead of a shin, and it'll be a great story. ESPN will do all the coverage about how bold and brave he is. Yes, he'll come back. Taking the Astros at their word, a bone bruise is something that could take a long time to come back from. Do I think it was a fracture and they don't want to say that for whatever reason? Probably, but does it matter at this point? Probably not. It's just something else for Astros fans to get mad about because the Astros don't report injuries the way we would like them to. Not that it's really any of our business, but that's a whole different can of worms. Yeah, he'll be back, and I would expect he'll be back in the next couple of weeks, which is just weird for what was initially something that was supposed to be day-to-day. He's now missed almost 60 days. I think at the end of this week.
I guess it's just day-to-day 60 times.
Yeah.
One of the other things too, Brian, that we're obviously worried about, right, is Blanco, Hunter Brown, and Arrighetti are going to start gumming up against the most innings they've pitched in a baseball season.
Yeah.
How much do you think that we're going to be able to rely on Verlander and Luis Garcia to help kind of spread that out and go to a 6-man? I mean, should we have any real hope of those two guys coming back and being an impact?
Yeah, I mean, Verlander seems on – it's slow, but he seems on schedule. We'll get him back in the next couple of weeks. Garcia is tougher, right, because he began a rehab assignment and then was shut down and is apparently going to start again. And so that feels to me like he's the September 1st roster expansion. They get one more pitcher, one more hitter. And so, I don't know sort of what we'll do with what we'll get out of that. But, yeah, anything to get more regular starting pitching. I mean, their fifth starter is Jake Bloss, who was not the number one, was in last year's draft, but not the number one pick on it. I think we all agree that he's, in the ideal world, he'd still be in the minors. He's still a future value, not current value, but they don't have another choice. And so, Verlander, they need to get Verlander back, and signs are that they will, even if it's slower than we like.
Yeah, and it seems like, Andy, that Luis Garcia, the way to maybe control his innings might be to pitch him long relief out of the bullpen, or at least in the playoffs, look at him as more of a bullpen piece, not a starting piece. We did see how he did in the bullpen in 2022, which was pretty sweet. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Dana Brown said something to that effect yesterday when he was talking about Justin Verlander's neck stiffness. Also said Luis Garcia, he threw 35 pitches Friday, has shown no ill effects to this point. So he is probably going to be sent to the minor leagues, I would guess, at some point this week. And then he'll have a month to basically figure out how much he can ramp up. Seeing him before mid to late August would be a giant surprise, unless they just see that there's no way he's going to ramp up to 90 pitches. So we might as well just bring him back as a long reliever. They're going to play the long game with him because they still have control over him. He is somebody who will be in the rotation next year, health provided. So sacrificing his short-term health for a little bit of gain won't be something they do, but all the signs point to positive things for Luis Garcia. Justin Verlander is a different situation because he has old man injuries now. where he woke up with a stiff neck and it's now lasted more than a month. I relate to that. I get it. It happens. It doesn't happen to 25-year-olds. It happens to 45-year-olds. So every injury Justin Verlander has for the rest of his career, and when he does come back, enjoy him, because he won't be a Houston Astro next year. There's no way he makes the 140 innings pitched. It would be a virtual impossibility at this point. So enjoy seeing him in the uniform one more time until we trade for him at the 2026 deadline, I guess.
Yeah, I do think he's right, though, Brian, in the sense that we can just count on part of me wonders if they have been taking their time with Verlander because he's an old man and they don't want to have a recurrence of an injury that keeps him out of the rotation for the playoffs. That was to Brian.
Yeah, possibly, right? But they have another issue of getting to the playoffs, right? Their chances of getting to the playoffs are, 2 and 3. And so, they can't just, it's not like 2022 where, do whatever you want in the second half of the season, because the only thing that matters is October. We know we're in. I've had a lot of seasons like that. This isn't one of those seasons. They are percentage points ahead, but they are tied for the division lead, and they are behind in the wild card if the Mariners go on a run. So they need to continue to play well and not regress. So, getting Verlander. So I don't think they're slow playing Verlander because the need to win today is much bigger than it's been, in lots of previous seasons.
I'm curious as to what you guys think of the two teams that are in contention with the Astros right now for the division. One I want to talk about first of all is the Rangers. Now it seems like the Rangers swept a bad White Sox team. They decided that they were going to be buyers and then promptly got swept by a mid-Toronto team. Do you feel like they're going to end up maybe just standing pat? I feel like you can't make a really educated guess as to what they're going to do at the deadline because they're now 4.5 out of first place. Like there's the high likelihood of them making the playoffs, Brian, is really, really low.
Yeah. Their odds of making the playoffs, I think, are down at 13, 14%. At Fangraphs, varies on your projection side. Part of that is Fangraphs has never thought this Rangers team is all that good. And that seems to be more correct than I thought it was back in the spring. I guess it's possible they'll get a hot streak, but it doesn't seem likely. Again, their best position player this year is Josh Smith. He leads their team in WAR, and if you're a baseball fan and you're not familiar with Josh Smith, that's fine because he's not a star. He's not one of their big players, and that's injuries and part of that sort of other stuff here. But again, sort of speaks to that with the Rangers. And so the good news for the Astros is that may add some more pitchers, particularly if they decide to sell Michael Lorenzen and John Gray onto the market. I'm not sure the Rangers would send him here, but more supply in the market makes it easier for the Astros to make it.
Well, and Gray just left the game yesterday. I didn't think he even started the game with a groin injury, so he might be at this point in the season
or not.
He might not even be available anymore. Mm-hmm. Andy, what do you think about the Mariners? Again, they kind of had the same thing where they got a lot of confidence now because they again swept a very bad White Sox team. But I still am skeptical that you can fix an entire offense through a trade deadline.
Offense is more difficult to deal with. We have a recent example of that where the Braves fixed their offense during the 2021 season, and we remember how that ended up. I remember the Astros winning a pennant. That's what I remember.
Who was part of the front office, Andy? Do we remember?
It was Dana Brown.
No, he sucks. I was understood. I was told he sucks.
Yeah, I don't think just picking up a Rosarena is going to be enough to fix the Mariners' issues. He immediately becomes one of their best players, so they have that going for him. But it wasn't an incremental improvement over whoever he's going to be replacing day to day. So it'll be interesting. Going back to the Rangers for just a second, a lot of Rangers fans will tell you that Evan Carter's going to come back and Josh Young is going to come back and DeGrom might pitch this year, and that's going to make the difference. they're in the same boat the Astros are. They're just hoping that they get health and it's all just going to fix itself.
Yeah.
But I think they're less willing to gamble on this year from a prospect perspective or a trade perspective than the Astros are. With the Mariners, I still think they're going to have to give up part of that rotation to get incrementally better offensively. And I don't know if giving up part of that rotation makes them a worse team. It probably does, because the only thing keeping them in contention now is their starting pitching. So do they have prospects that are more attractive? Probably, because they have a higher ranked minor league system. But the Mariners front office doesn't seem to value offensive players who can actually hit. So I don't know what the plan is for them. And even if they were to acquire somebody, it's going to be a Rosarena level where maybe there's a really high upside, but there's a really high probability that that person's not going to continue to be any better than they already were. Rosarena was the ultimate change of scenery kind of trade. Let's just hope he gets better because he's in a different uniform. And I just don't know that that's going to bear out for them.
Yeah, back to your Rangers point too. The Astros are waiting for Kyle Tucker to come back. They're waiting for Evan Carter and Josh Young, who are also going to be in their second seasons of Major League Baseball. Who knows how they're going to respond to coming back.
And Carter's getting a second opinion on his back, which never means he doesn't like the current opinion. So
yeah, I guess that's true.
He may not come back this year. And Josh Young.
I do have a kind of a positive conversation to wrap the show up on. So the Astros tonight are going to be playing. They're playing the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're going to be playing against Skeens, who was like Paul Skeens, who's the rookie phenomenon. Andy, are you the kind of baseball fan at this point where you can just tune in to see what's been an exciting player, the results of the game be damned, or are you hoping this is the one time where he gets blown up in the first inning with 9 runs and goes on to pitch well after that?
I'd be satisfied with a Saturday performance against the Dodgers, against the Pirates tonight, where Skeens can be the best player he can be for 6 innings and then leaves the game with a lot of applause. I'm sure he'll have a bunch of LSU fans there rooting him on, and then immediately let their bullpen blow the game. That's what I'm hoping for.
What about you, Brian? You excited to at least get a look at him?
I mean, it's an exciting pitcher from the 2023 draft who's immediately made his way to the majors. He's also facing Paul Skeens. I have faith in Jake Bloss tonight.
It is going to be interesting, though, as college baseball continues to get more competitive. And I know we don't talk college baseball on this show a lot, but they approved 34 scholarships for baseball teams for NCAA starting next year. So that's going to mean if you don't like what you got signed for or getting drafted for, if you do get drafted in a 20-round draft, there's going to be a lot more talent that goes to the college baseball. And a lot more talent in college baseball means you're going to have more guys like Paul Skeens, maybe not as good, but more guys who are immediately available to be drafted and then by the next season are making impacts in the major leagues. So it's going to be fun to watch that progress just as a storyline in general in Major League Baseball. But Skeens is a great story. He's, from all accounts, a great kid, even though he went to LSU. You can't, no accounting for taste.
You just can't read. You just can't read, right, Andy?
I mean, he was willing to be a veteran and then was willing to take a lot of money to not be a veteran. So I understand both sides.
God bless America.
All I know is I was thinking about when Andy said that when a Rosarena went to the Mariners, he immediately became their best player. I was thinking about that when A&M went to the SEC, they immediately became the best school in the SEC. Like, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. All right, gentlemen, any last?
So in this analogy, a Rosarena is Johnny Football, which is true because he's very overhyped and probably couldn't beat LSU.
Oh, boy. I didn't mean to start anything. I was just sort of trying to make a joke.
There's nothing to say. They were the one team that played him correctly.
All right.
It is a huge day for LSU people. It's Bregman versus Skeens. I like my chances on Bregman though tonight because he's Alex Bregman.
I do too. I like Alex Bregman. Last parting note to you guys. I texted you guys this, but I wanted to recommend the HBO Max Pete Rose documentary if you haven't seen it. Pete Rose does a really good job for 4 episodes of reminding you why he's one of the biggest pieces of crap to ever walk the earth. And it's a fascinating documentary. It's really well done, but he keeps asking documentarian, are you going to try to make me look bad? And my wife was finally like, no, you're doing a really good job of that all on your own.
Hey, she wasn't 14. She was 16, which is legal in Ohio. So just shut up.
That's the way we're going to wrap the show up. Remember that, guys. They're legal at 16 in Ohio. I am Jim Christopher for Andy Tom Chesson, Brian Arbor. Big game tonight. I'll be out at the ballpark. Remember, if you subscribe to this YouTube channel and are interested in going to the game, I'm going to be drawing one person to attend with our tickets on Wednesday night. Until then, guys, go Astros.